Hello and welcome to Growing with Fiddly Fefe. Today, in compliance with social distancing, we will be filming from my very own sunroom. I get to do the show at home, guys. I hope you enjoy. Welcome to Growing with Fiddly Fefe, where everybody has a green thumb. Today we're talking about the Monstera Deliciosa. And my Monstera Deliciosa needs a new pot. So I'm going to share that with you. Let me tell you a little bit about this plant. It's a pretty easy plant to take care of in your home. You do need quite a bit of space, all right? Unless you want to train it to climb up a pole, and we'll talk about that in a minute. These plants are originally from Mexico, where they're basically an epiphyte. Is a plant that can grow without any soil. And they can climb trees, and as they climb, the leaves get larger and larger. For this reason, they end up fenestrating. Over about 2 feet in width. And so when the wind is blowing, if they didn't have these fenestrations, it could really do some damage to their foliage. So for that reason, they go ahead and split apart, all right? In the wild, they will flower, and they also have fruit. The fruit tastes a little bit like pineapple. I've never tried one, but I certainly would love to. So in your house, this is going to be watered maybe every 7 to 10 days. You don't want it to dry out, but you don't want it to be too wet, because we don't want to take a risk of having root rot occur. Root rot is when your roots sit in water, for stagnant water, for a period of time, and that creates a bacteria. And as we know, the roots transfer everything from the soil into the bark of the tree, or into the stems, and then into the leaves. And root rot can certainly kill your plant. So you don't want it too wet, but you don't want it to get too dry. In addition to that, they can tolerate low light because they are from a rainforest. So they can tolerate low light, but when you put them in bright light, they grow even faster and they become way more dramatic and way more beautiful. So you can feed these during the growing season. You can feed them every 2 weeks. You can feed them a regular fertilizer like a Miracle Grow or something like that. I'll show you guys what I use later on as we're talking, but you want to feed them every 2 weeks. And if you can put them in a really bright light, that's going to be for the best, okay? So today we're going to do a repot. The most important skill in gardening is observation. That is the absolute most important. You got to go check your plants. You got to look at them, see what's going on. So on watering day, I noticed that this soil is pulling away from the pot quite a bit. And so I noticed that there's not much soil in this pot. This is pretty root bound.
Oh my God.
You can see that there's not much soil left. These roots have nowhere else to go, so they begin curling and curling around inside the pot. So it's time to give this a new pot. So, rule of thumb. First of all, this is how you figure out how large your pot is. I've got my measuring tape here. So, to measure your pot, you're going to go from one side to the other. So this right here is about a 10-inch pot. It's technically 10.5, but it's considered to be a 10-inch pot. The pot we took it out of is 8 inches. So you only want to go up 2 inches or maybe 4 inches, okay, depending on the plant. So you just want to go up to give it a little more room. It's kind of like if you have to buy your kid new shoes. Your kid wears a size 2. You're not going to go up to a size 5. You're going to go to 2.5 or 3. If your child is growing from a size 2 to a size 5 in a couple of months, you need your own show because that's a miracle. So with plants, you only want to go up a couple of inches, 2 inches, maybe 4 inches. We're going to leave this 8 and we're going to go to a 10. Now, I like to use these nursery pots for a couple of reasons. One, for the most part, I do my gardening by myself. And I have to pick up these plants and transfer them here or put them outside or repot them. And so keeping it in this nursery pot keeps it nice and lightweight for me. If I want to put it in ceramic, it's going to get really heavy, especially when you put soil and especially when that soil is wet. So I keep mine in a nursery pot so they can be nice and lightweight. In addition, the second reason I use my nursery pots, drainage. Tons of drainage holes to make sure that no water sits in there and causes any root rot. Okay, so that's very important to me for the lightweight and easy mobility of the plant and also for the drainage holes. If you don't want this, not so pretty plant pot in your house for decorative reasons, you can always buy the ceramic pot and use it as a cover. So once we repot this in here, it's going to be in this plain black pot, but we can always sit it right in this cover pot and no one will ever know the difference. I mean, if somebody's going over looking into your pot, they're too nosy and they don't belong in your house anyway. So today we're going to do this repot and we're going to start by gently separating these roots so that they'll understand that when they get in this new pot and this new soil, they can start reaching out for all those amazing nutrients. Now, if you should happen to break one of the roots, it's not going to kill the plant, okay? So don't panic, but try not to. But if something happens, it just happens. Now, these are the main roots of the plant, but they also have aerial roots. This is an aerial root. So when you see this on the plant, there's nothing wrong. This is an aerial root. These are the roots they use to climb those trees, as I told you, in the wild, okay? So if you want, you can also train your houseplant to climb up a pole, and that will make the leaves even larger and make the plant even more dramatic, and it also would lessen the space that you need. You can put it in a different spot. So we're just gonna start by clearing out whatever soil is left. And like I said, you want to water this every 7 to 10 days. Some people feel that you should give it distilled water, but let me tell you a little trick. If you don't want to go out and buy bottled water for your plant, couple of things you can do. First, easiest, cheapest. Whatever you're going to water your plant in with, you're going to take that watering can, you're going to fill it up with your tap water, and you sit it out for 24 to 48 hours. And most of those chemicals should evaporate and make the water a lot safer. So you're just going to fill up your watering can, let it sit for 24 to 48 hours. So that's one way. Another way is I noticed maybe a couple of weeks ago at Home Depot, they had a water filter. The ones that you can put right in your refrigerator, whether it's Brita, Zero Water, one of those. You can use one of those just for your plants. That's a little bit of an expense. I think I found one on sale for under $50, but it's a little bit of an expense. Of course, you don't want it in the refrigerator, but you can always use that. Fill that up with tap water. That tap water goes through whatever charcoal filter they have, and then you'll have basically distilled water. Third, another cheap and easy way, rainwater. Just put a bucket outside when it rains and collect that rainwater. You'll want to strain it before you give it to your plants, just in case there's anything in there, okay? So we've basically got these roots pulled apart so they can start growing into their new home. That's basically what we're gonna do. And this is looking pretty good. It looks pretty healthy. It's not like it's a plant that was complaining about not being repot, but because I was observant, I was able to see that it needed a repot. So we've got most of these roots clear, and the only thing left to do now is to put it in its new pot. So here's where we got to get down and dirty. I'm getting on the blower. Let's go. And you can actually really see how large this plant is and how the roots have developed. Really healthy roots. They're not browning and weird looking. They look really healthy. So I'm really happy about that. All right. So our foundation, our everything is the soil, because this is where we get our nutrients from. This is where we get our nutrients from. So it's really important to have a really good foundation, because plants can stay in their pots for several years, 2 years, 4 years, so until they're ready to be repotted. So everything about this soil has got to be thought of, and so everything about this soil has to be geared toward the nutrition of the plant. So what I have in here is, I do have about 10% perlite, which is the white that you see here. I do have some orchid bark in here. And I also have some peat moss in here. And then I have just a basic soil mix that is going to be moisture retaining, because I don't want it to clump up. I want it to be very loose and well draining, but I also don't want it to be too dry like a cactus soil. I also have here some worm castings, and worm castings are great to add. I'm going to add maybe about 10% of the worm castings. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add some soil here. I'm going to do the kind of lazy way, instead of scooping it one scoop at a time, and just pour it in there. What you want to do is you want to plant, you want to bury all of the roots. You want to leave, let me show you. You want to bury the roots, but you also want to leave maybe about a ½ inch to an inch here, so that when you water the plant later on, the water won't just be splashing out, all right? So we're going to start and figure out our levels from here, what level we want to pot it. Man, I'm making a mess. I tend to be really messy as a gardener. I always clean up after it, but I tend to be pretty darn messy. So we've got our soil in here, and what we're going to do is create we're going to create a little spot in there to sit this in. So I'm going to try it once because we have to kind of measure our levels and see. Look at those roots. Look at that. Oh, look at that. That's awesome. Okay. So right about here is going to be a little bit too low, as you can see. So I'm going to add some more soil to this. And you might have to do this a couple of times. You might have to add more. And I keep stirring the soil because I want to make sure that everything is mixed really well. At this point, I'm going to be adding some worm castings to my mix. I just want to add it in like that. Want to add it in like that, give it a quick stir. And let's try again to see if we're at that point. Made the little section there for it, and here we go. Get on in there. Now you can cut those roots. I'm not going to. I tend to be one of these gardeners. I like to let the plants just do whatever they do. So I don't interfere with how they grow, or not too much. So here we are with our Monstera Deliciosa in her new home. Now, just as when you go to a new home or you have changes, she might be affected. You might see, you know, the leaf drop a little bit, or you might see some browning, but don't worry about it. It's just adjusting to its new home. The last thing we're gonna do, water. And you just wanna make sure that you water it in very well. And I added that top dressing of worm castings. And we have our well-draining pot. And thankfully, that 10-inch pot fit right here into my decorative pot. So we're right back to normal, except we have this beautiful new space, and I got tons of room for, tons of wiggle room for my roots. So that's it, ladies and gentlemen. The Monstera Deliciosa, aka the Swiss cheese plant. We've repotted her. She's ready to go. Hope y'all have a wonderful, wonderful day. And please stay safe, stay inside.